unit all about? What is this unit all about? And so this unit is mainly about triangles. And when we talk about triangles, there are parts of triangles that are particularly important. So we talk about the angles in a triangle, and then we talk about the sides in a triangle. And in geometry, we use this notation where the angles or the vertices have capital letters, and then the little letters are the sides opposite them. So that would be little c, and that would be little b. And so often when we're talking about triangles, you'll see the big letters for the corners or the angles and the little letters for the sides. What we're going to learn to do in this particular module is we're going to learn how to find unknown sides in a triangle when we've got information. And we're also going to learn how to find unknown angles. So we might say, for example, in this case, we might learn how to figure out this angle. So basically, we're finding, and that is what be about. If I give you some information in a triangle, and there's some, so let's go to an example of what this might look like. So here is a question, and I've called this lesson grade 9 and 10 triangle tools, because these are tools that you may have picked up over grade 9 and 10. So question number 1 is, can you find the value of x in this triangle? So over to you guys. I'm going to give you a minute or so, or even less, and I want you to put the answer in the chat. What is the answer for this unknown angle? What tool do you have from earlier on in your maths education? I want you to think back. Okay. Oh, you guys are naturals. So I see in the chat you've said all triangles add up to 180 degrees. And so because of that, if they all add up to 180, I just have to take away these two. So that's 155. And so your answer should be 25 degrees. And what we often do in geometry is when we make a deduction like that, we give a reason. So that would be sum of angles in a triangle. Okay, awesome. So you have solved for the unknown angle in a triangle. Great work, guys. Okay, well, let's do another one. Let's do something like D. So in D, I want you to solve for the unknown value of x. That was in this question, and then this angle over here is 3x. So it's a slight difference, but I want to see, can you find the value of x in this triangle? And then when you find that value of x, it'll help you figure out what the angles are. So over to you guys. I think you can still use the same idea, or all the angles of a triangle add up to 180. So some answers, a good question might be, what is this thing over here? I think most of you would know that it's 90, huh? So I was thinking we should add up all the angles inside a triangle, and they should be equal to 180. And so we'd use the same reason as before, which would be sum of angles in triangle. And then we have to figure out this equation, which I think is going to give us 2x and 3x is 5x. 10 plus 90 is 100. And then if we take away 100 from both sides, we get 5x is 80. And then if we divide both sides by 5, we get 16 degrees. Okay. So that would be an example of solving for an unknown triangle where it's a little bit harder. Are there any questions about that one? Or give me a thumbs up if you feel okay so far. That you basically follow the idea of what I was doing.
Mr. S, we have a question from Zoom user.
We can unmute Zoom user. Yeah. You just click on the ask to unmute.
Hi, sir.
There we go. Hi, Zoom user. How's it going?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Very good. What can I help you with?
I wanted to ask is it all the time that we have to add that 90 if we find a right angled triangle, or it's on those questions only?
Okay, so basically I wanted to find what x was, and because this angle of 90 was in the triangle, I was just adding up all 3 of the angles inside the triangle, and 90 was just one of those.
Was part of it. Okay.
Yeah. Now, while I've
Okay.
got you, I want to ask you another question. You see this 3x down here? We've
Yes.
worked out what x is. Could you figure out what this whole angle is? Like, could you tell me what the whole angle down here is using the x that you found?
Okay.
Do you understand what I mean by that question?
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay. What do you think it is? Are you with me here? So what I was suggesting was, if you know x is 16, then this angle over here will be 48, because 3 times 16 will give you 48. So that's just something I want to point out. Okay, let's move on to another question like this, and then we will go on to a slightly different tool. Figure out the value of x for me in this question. So some of you may remember this as the external angle of a triangle theorem, but there's more than one way to do this. And again, all we're doing is we're solving for an unknown value in a triangle. Okay, I see one answer that's come through so far. Let's see who else might have a go at the answer. Okay. So the one way of doing it is saying the exterior angle is equal to the sum of the interior opposites. So I do think that basically 105 should be equal to 55 plus x. And that's what students are doing. And that's called the exterior angle of a triangle. And if you take away 55 from both sides, then you would get that x is 50. So spot on. The other way of doing it was just to work out that angles on a straight line are 180. So that would be 75. And then once you know that's 75 and that's 55, you would also get that that's 50. Okay, so that is called the exterior angle of a triangle. And we definitely need to bring that. In this section, I'm going to talk about what's called the toolbox. And these are things that you need to have in your toolbox. Let's move on a little bit. Why don't we do this one? Can you work out what x is for me? Let's do 2 questions at once. I want you to work out what x is in question A, and then I want you to work out what x and what y is in question B. So we're going to do 2 questions now. We're going to do this one over here, and then we're going to do this one over here. And this has two answers. And all we're doing is we're just checking the tools in our toolkit. These are all little skills that we need to bring with us. Okay, I see Madeleine's given an answer. I see Sia Bonga. I see Zoom user. So for A, you're quite right. X is 55 degrees. And the reason would be angles opposite equal sides. So in triangles, whenever you have two equal sides, or whenever you have an isosceles triangle, you have two equal sides, then the angles opposite them are going to be equal to each other. Okay, so that is going to be, that's going to come up a lot. And so we need to make sure we've got that. Now for the next one, we need to get the same idea going. And you're right, X is 44 degrees because of that same idea. It's opposite and equal side. But now what's Y going to be? Give you a little bit of time. Okay, so I think most students feel pretty comfortable. To get Y, I just go 180 minus 44 minus 44, and I'm going to end up with 92 degrees. Now, guys, I haven't written in my reasons, but just because of time, but you do normally need to give reasons when you work these out. Okay, I feel like we're pretty comfortable with this. And so now I want to go to another famous tool in our triangle kit. So let's go to this one. And this is a famous theorem called the theorem of Pythagoras. And in order to do this section well, we need to be familiar with Pythagoras. And so I want you to look at the drawing and I want you to tell me which of the four options describes the theorem of Pythagoras. So you've got four options, A, B, C, D, and you're given a triangle which has labels of the sides. And I want to know which one of these four represents the theorem of Pythagoras, or what I will call the tool of Pythagoras. And Pythagoras helps you find sides in a triangle. But the way this question is phrased, it's a bit tricky. What do you think, Lebo? I've been quite sneaky the way I've written it. It kind of looks the same.
Yes.
So I'll give you one hint. In a right angled triangle, the hypotenuse is really important, and it's always opposite the right angle. And so what I would normally do is I say you square the hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse squared is going to be c squared. And so that would knock out these ones here. And so all I've got left with is B or D. But for the theorem of Pythagoras, okay, I see lots of students are going with B. With the theorem of Pythagoras, it's the hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum of the two other sides squared. And so the correct answer is going to be that one. And so that's going to be B down here. D has a minus sign in it, and so that's not going to work. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you feel like you understand the theorem of Pythagoras or you recognize it. Just want to make sure that you feel comfortable before we practice it. Okay, let's go. So I want you to find me the value of X in this particular question. And I haven't told you the tool that you're going to use, but I think it's pretty obvious that using the theorem of Pythagoras would be a good idea. So can you find what X is? Then I'm going to put the light on. I think if we wrote out Pythagoras the long way, we'd say x squared is 5 squared plus 12 squared. Now, what would our final answer? Now, again, when we use a tool, we normally have to write down a reason for that tool. So pythag. Okay. And I think quite a few of you are going to get this. And then the last step is you square root both sides, and you're going to get, you would get plus or minus 13, but 13 because it's a physical distance. Okay, fantastic. And it's 13 centimeters. Okay, well done. So that is one question on Pythagoras, and we all seem comfortable. Let's do another one. Take a screenshot if you need to. And then let's go to these next two questions. I want you to solve for x in, we'll call this question A and this question B. Now, there's a slight difference here in these two questions. So I want you to watch out for them. So can you get A and B's answers? And notice there's a subtle difference. And then I found, guys, with previous classes that if you want to ask a question, while the students are working on a question, now is a great time for you to raise your hand or ask an audible question. So don't be afraid. We love hearing the voices. Me and Lebo, we love hearing people's voices. So don't be afraid. I think the most important thing is to find the hypotenuse. If you find the hypotenuse, then you're onto something. Okay, so with A, we're going to get 10 squared is 8 squared plus x squared. And then we should get an answer of 6. Yeah. So x is 6 for A. What about B? Now, so they won't all be nice and neat. So far, we've had questions where it's always ended up being neat, but sometimes it won't be. So I look for my hypotenuse and I write 7 squared equals . And what do we have? Well, I move the 1 across and it's going to be minus 1. Is that? And so I have to square root both sides, and the square root of 48 is 4 root 3, or it could also be 6.93 if I round off. I get, let me make sure I haven't made a silly mistake. 49, you know, I get 6.93, or you could write it as 4 root 3. Okay. Okay. Any questions about that or comments? If you made a silly mistake, do you know where you made your silly mistake? Just take a screenshot now. We're going to do one more of Pythagoras, and I think we're ready to move on. Okay. Let us do, we're going to do, let's do B. So just this one over here. Find me the value of x for B. And then if you have done that okay, then I think we're ready to move on. So again, we're looking to see which one is the hypotenuse. It's opposite the right angle. And so for the tool for Pythagoras, we write x squared equals 20 squared plus 15 squared. And we should get that. And if we square root both sides, we should get 25. Okay, awesome. So what have we done so far today? We've done finding angles and sides, which is basic properties of triangles. And then we've also done this tool called Pythagoras, which is really helpful in finding an unknown side if you've got a right angle triangle. So that's what we've done so far today. Now, what I want everyone to stand up and stretch. So if you could just turn your cameras on, and we're all just going to stand up for a second. And Nebo, if you could just help me by identifying the most gifted stretchers in the class. And we are just going to stretch it out like you're at a Virgin Active class, and just release the tension in your shoulders and give it a little stretch. And if you can turn your camera on, we love seeing your lovely faces. Just give it a nice shoulder roll and a nice stretch. And whatever stretch makes you comfortable, because we know when we're doing maths, it can be a bit tiring. And so we like to have a bit of a break between things. Who do you think's got the best stretch going on, Lebo? Can you see Younger's doing a pretty good
I see
stretch.
Younger's doing a pretty good job. And Zoom user.
Oh, I like that enthusiasm. I like it. I love seeing you guys on camera. It just makes it feel like so much more like a classroom. So thank you for turning your cameras on for that stretch, guys. Okay, cool. Let's do the brain break. So this is a fun little task that we like to just keep it interesting. So can you work out what a red apple is worth in this particular? What do you think we'll do this together. So the goal is to find out what this is worth at the very bottom. But in order to get there, we're going to use our powers of thinking. And we're going to start, what is a red apple if a red apple times a red apple times a red apple is 27? So I think 9, the apple is 9. Well, but if it was 9 times 9, it would be 81. So how about if you start with 3, so that's 9 times 3 would be 27. Aha, so I see in the chat, everyone has said the red apple is 3. Now, what is the lemon going to be? Let's have a look then. What do you guys think the lemon is going to be? I see a couple of people have, see people are saying it's a 2. So 3 times 8 is 24. And then if you put these as 2s, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. All right. So now we need to pay some attention to these peaches. And this is where knowing your times tables is quite helpful. But just think about it. 3 times 2 is 6. And so then 6 times something is 96. And then what do these 2 peaches need to be? There's a song that goes, millions of peaches, peaches for me. Anyway, I won't bore you with that. It's a good tune. A good tune.
Yeah.
Muji has said 4, 6 times, let's check that. So 6 times 16 is 96, which means that's 4. You're quite right. So what's the final answer, guys? And Muji, I think I agree with you. So Bodmas says you have to go 3 times 2 first which gives you 6. And then what is the final answer going to be? It's going to be, so remember, it's 4 plus 3 times 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. And then 4 plus 6, the final answer is going to be 10. Okay. So guys, we're going to do one of these brain breaks in every lesson. And so we're just going to keep on practicing that. But I hope you enjoyed today's brain break. Okay, last new tool for today. Something really important that we need to think about in solving triangles is something called grade 10 trigonometry. And so, sorry guys, I'm going to remove this from earlier in the lesson. You may have heard something called SOHCAHTOA. And so I'm actually going to do this first one. Should I do it with you? Maybe I should give you a chance to do it. I'll give you a hint. So you have to find the length of side A, which is this side of the triangle. And we are going to use, in trigonometry, we call this side the H. We would call this side the O, and we call that side the A. And I want you to try, and if you don't know how to do this, it's completely fine, I'll explain it. But how do you find the length of this one over here using trigonometry? See if you can do that. And if you've forgotten, it's completely fine. But I'll give you one hint. You know it's going to involve 16. And you know it's going to involve this length over here. And so what trig ratio involves an A and an H? So why don't you start by telling me, tell me in the chat, which trig ratio is going to be involved in solving this question? So I'm trying to find the length of side A. Okay, well done, guys. So it's going to be cos, because you need to involve A and H, which is over here. Okay, now, if you wrote that out, could you use the cos, and it's going to be the cos of 31. So the cos of 31 equals something. Can you use a trigonometric statement to work out the answer? Or should we write this out first? So cos is A over H. So I'll get A divided by 16. So basically this was the A and that was the H. What is my final answer for A going to be? So in the chat, you've got to choose A, B, or C, or D. And you're figuring out this unknown side that's in purple. Now you will need a calculator. So some answers have come through already. Keep them coming through. So I think to solve this trig equation, you have to move the 16 to the other side or multiply both sides by 16. So you get 16 times the cos of 31 is A. And the cos of 31, you should get, what are we saying in the chat? So you should get 13.71, which is the answer. The correct answer is going to be A. Give me, guys, if you understand what I'm doing here, give me a thumbs up. If you feel confused, give me a thumbs down. Because this is what we call grade 10 trigonometry, and we're solving for sides. Okay. Here are the that has a right angle, and you're given some information. You can use a trig ratio, and I will help you a little bit in the next one. But basically, in this question, we were given the hypotenuse, and we were asked for the adjacent side. And so we used the trig ratio that was over here that had a cos. And so we wrote the cos of 31 is just A over H to help us. Okay, let's try another one like that. If you need to take a screenshot of this one. And we're going to try and solve this next one. Okay. This is a little bit, not harder, but it's using the same idea. So you need to find the length of M over here. And you are given, it's a right angle triangle. You're given the length of one of the sides, which is the hypotenuse. And you need to figure out which of these four statements make sense if you're using SOHCAHTOA to help you find that unknown side. So just start by asking yourself which sides are even involved. You're given this H, which gives you a bit of a clue. Now, what is the other side that is involved in this triangle? And what does that mean about which ratio you need to use and how it works? So I'll give you 45 seconds to a minute to figure this out. Okay, so there's a couple of different options coming in. I like it. So keep those options coming. I was thinking that this is called the O, the opposite, and this is the H. So the trig ratio that's involved is going to be sine, and the angle is 50. So the sine of 50 is equal to O over H, or in this particular scenario, it's M over 6. Now, in all these questions, I have an M all by itself. So I need to get the M by itself. And the way I'm going to do that is by getting the 6 to come to the other side. And so you should get an answer of 6 times the sine of 50 equals M. So which of these options have that? Well, it's definitely not C. It's definitely not D. In B, the 6 is inside the angle, so that's wrong. And so the correct answer will be A. It's the sine of 50 times by 6. So guys, what I recommend doing is when you're solving a triangle using grade 10 trigonometry, you always ask yourself, what am I given? And I was given the H. And then ask yourself, what do I want to figure out? And what I want to figure out is called the O. Then I wrote down the sine ratio because that was the one that was involved with O and H. And then I wrote down the angle. And then I just write down my sides that are involved. And then I go from that point onwards. Okay, take a screenshot if you need to now of this question. Then let's move on to this one. So notice, guys, in all the questions I'm giving angles. Now, there are many triangles in the universe, but for today, I'm just giving you right angle triangles. When you're given right angle triangles, you can use this thing called trigonometry or SOHCAHTOA to help us. And in this question, they're asking you for this side over here. What is the length of side A? And I want you to figure out for me which of the options A, B, C, or D is the length of side A. Over to you guys. So think about what is step 1. It's identifying which side. So that's the angle. So this is going to be called the opposite, and it's definitely involved. Now, the hypotenuse is not involved, which means the 21 must be called the adjacent. And so what trig ratio involves O and A? Well, it's going to be tan. So we write the tan of 15 is equal to A over 21. And then we take that 21. So think about it again. We wrote down the ratio, a over 21, and then we're going to bring this 21 to the other side. And so we'll get 21 times the tan of 15 is a. And in our calculators, we type that 21 times the tan of 15, and we get, 5.63, or 5.6 is going to be the closest one if it's to one decimal place. So 5.6. So the answer is going to be B. Okay, guys, let me know how you're feeling about finding the length of sides using trigonometry. If you're feeling okay, give me a thumbs up. If you're feeling meh, give me a thumbs and a up and down. And if you're feeling horribly lost, thumbs down. Because we're adding to my toolkits. I'm like Bob the Builder here, and I'm just checking, have I got this tool? Have I got that tool? Do I know how to use it? Awesome. Okay, now, there's one last thing we're going to do today, and that's when we use trigonometry to solve for unknown angles. Now, in this one, we were solving for unknown sides. Notice how we were always looking for a side. How can we use trigonometry to help us find the length of angles? So it's just a slight difference, slight difference. And I want to give you the opportunity to try and figure out this question before I do it for you. So you're given a right angle triangle, but the difference now is you're given the length of two sides. And you don't know the angle that's down here. And so the way you solve your trig equation is slightly different. And in fact, you know what? I'll do this one for you, and then you can do the next one. So what do you do? What's the slight difference? You still want to know what is the name of the side. So this will be O, and that will be H. So you're going to involve the sine ratio. And it's the sine of angle X. And sine of angle X is going to be equal to O over H. Now, what is O over H? It's 7 over 10. Okay, now this is what's different to before. You can't just type in your calculator sine 7 over 10. What you need to do is use the inverse function. And so to get X, you are going to type shift sine 7 over 10, or sometimes it's called arc sine or inverse sine. Basically, you're telling the calculator, I'm giving you a ratio of the sides. Give me an angle, please. And so if you type that in your calculator, you get shift sine 7 over 10, and you should get 44.4, which is B. Okay, so that was my example one for you. Notice how I still wrote my trig equation out like normal, but this time, because I was solving for an angle, I had to use what's called the inverse trig function. Okay, take a screenshot if you need to now. I'm going to move on to the next one. So, can you find the value of X for me using trigonometry? I'm going to get some more water while you guys figure that out. So that would be H, that would be O, that would be A. Now, what trig ratio involves O and A? I think it's tan. So the tan of X would be equal to O over A. So 10/8. And then if I go inverse tan, or we should get shift tan. Okay, I've got my answer. What is your answer, guys? Correct. You get question C. You get 51.3. And so the answer is C. Okay,